Hi everyone, and welcome back to Decisive Squirrel Homestead. It is Friday, April 1st, and we haven't checked in on the garden in a little while, so we're going to go do a little walkthrough and see how everything is doing. Alright, so the weeds over here in this wooded area have come back full force now that the weather's warmed up. We need to get out here and really mow everything down, but we haven't had time yet. We had some issues with the lawnmower and we need to do some repairs on that, but hopefully this will get done this weekend. One of the biggest changes on our little homestead is our bees are gone. We haven't really talked about it, I don't think, but Josh is not quite allergic, but has really big local reactions to bee stings. And for whatever reason, the bees really don't like him. Every time he came out, they were going after him. No one else in the family ever got stung, but he got stung multiple times. And last weekend, he got stung even though he was wearing a bee suit. And it's just a whole ordeal. He's not really bad off when that happens, but he has to take steroids and very swollen up for almost a week every time, and it's just a big ordeal. So my brother came and picked up those bees and took them back to his house. We will still help with honey collection, but it just wasn't a great idea to have them here close to us anymore. So no more bees. Our lettuce bed here is doing great. The thyme is all blooming. Guinea pigs have been eating the lettuce, so some of that's gone, but that's because we've been utilizing it. Second bed is still empty. We're about to put more lettuce in there. My mustard greens are growing really well. I'm just waiting for those to bolt so I can get mustard seed. This other bed down here has lots and lots of mustard in it. The herb bed is taking off. There's lots of oregano, new mint, parsley, all of that's doing great. Our asparagus is all putting out shoots, so there are numerous new asparagus crowns that we put in this year, and they are all putting out these teeny tiny little asparagus stalks. We are not harvesting those this year. We are letting them grow and put out these leaves so that they build a good root system and can give us asparagus in future years. Our other asparagus bed down here with some older crowns is also putting out just a few stalks at a time. So we aren't harvesting these either. We're also letting these just leaf out. We might get like one serving of asparagus this year, but this is really a long-term thing. We're letting these crowns under the ground get going really good so that we have asparagus in the future. I think next year we're gonna start getting overrun with it, which is good. That was part of the point. This last bed on the end has some asparagus in it, has some dill in it, and has a lot of weeds. I started to weed this and it turns out there are fire ants in that bed. So I stopped at the moment and I will get back to it eventually, but I'm gonna have to have some tools and not just be pulling those weeds by hand. So those are our wicking beds. They're all doing really good. Everything is starting to come up really great in all of these. Over here in the main part of the garden, everything's going well. We have onions on the outside of this first bed that are really starting to get big. A lot of our strawberries are starting to put out flowers. Not very many of our new strawberries seem to be growing, so that's disappointing. I think part of that was based on when we got the freeze. I think we got a freeze too late for when we put these in, and that damaged them. But we do have quite a few strawberry plants and we'll just keep on keeping on. They're kind of perennials a little bit, so we can probably get those to be growing next year also. Our second bed over here is our carrot bed. It's doing a lot better. You can see down the row now there are places where carrots came up with our first planting that have now been thinned, and each spot is growing one carrot and they're doing really good. There are other places, especially here in the middle, like right here, where we have just teeny tiny sprouts that are coming up, and I've been going by and thinning those as they get bigger. So we put a bunch of seed in one spot, like you can see here. There's a whole bunch of little sprouts, and I'll come by and just pull some of them out as they start to come up. And I just keep doing that until we get down to the strongest survivor, and that one gets left to grow a carrot in that spot. But lots of carrots coming up, which is great. We didn't have enough to save any last year, so I'm really looking forward to getting these. And I don't know if we'll can any. We'll probably freeze dry them all. That works a little bit better for throwing them in soups and stuff. But that's all going really well. The third row down here has onions doing really great, and peas on the outside row. The peas are starting to bloom, so we will be getting green peas here soon, and those will also go in the freeze dryer. I just used the last of the green peas from last year, maybe about a month ago. We don't eat a ton of them, but I do throw a handful of them every time I make soup in the winter, and that works out really well. So all of those plants are doing well. I'm looking forward to harvesting those soon. In our fourth bed down here, we have tomatoes that are really starting to take off. I've had to start pruning some of the tomatoes. Some of the original plants I put in are starting to bloom. And this is a pretty big plant. I'll probably go ahead and let this bloom. I do have a few more tomato seedlings that I'm going to throw in where there are gaps along here. But overall, these are doing really well for this time of year. Everybody's happy, survived the freeze. We have marigolds mixed in here because that seemed to really help the tomatoes be healthier last year. And there's also some basil plants that are going to go in here. The other side of this row, there's onions all down the middle. Garlic on the outside. We have started harvesting some of the garlic, but not all of it's ready yet. But that will all come out of the ground soon. It's been in all winter. And on this last row, we have a few beets that made it. We'll probably get like 4 beets out of, we tried to plant this entire row. But it is what it is. There are a few squash plants in here that are not going to survive. They have dampening off disease where after they got planted, you can see the stem right there. It gets like really skinny. It's not really doing anything anymore. That plant's not going to live. I just haven't put other ones out here yet. I do have other ones. Peppers are going to go in the ground here probably today, maybe tomorrow. Oh, there's a tiny little squash. That's the first squash I've seen. And on the outside row of this bed, we have beans. We had a little bit of a mishap. I planted beans and then we didn't have time to keep up with the watering like we should have, and they didn't germinate like they should have. So we planted again and we've been watering, and we should have beans up in this last row in every spot along here pretty soon. These are all bush beans that will be harvested for fresh eating as green beans and then for canning. We throw a lot of green beans in soups in the winter. Berry vines, I don't know what's going on. I don't know if they're alive or not. All of the ones we planted are a little looking pretty dead. This blackberry here is doing well. It's got new growth on it, so that one's okay. This is another blackberry that looks like it's doing well. It's got some new growth on it. It's got a flower that wants to open up here at the end. And then we have dewberry vines, which just grow wild in our area, and we didn't know they were here, but they came up last year, and so we left them because they're meant to grow here, so we figured they're going to do okay. And sure enough, they have bloomed, and I see pollinators in there, so I'm expecting these will all turn into berries. And dewberries are basically a blackberry. You can eat them and cook with them just like blackberries. It's just that the vines have thorns, so it's not quite as nice as having a thornless blackberry, but it's a native plant that grows really well here, and we don't have to do anything about it, so we'll probably let that keep going. And that is all that's along this fence. We are pretty sure that previous owners had put Roundup along this fence somewhere. So we're thinking that's why things don't grow really well here. The grass has really taken off here more than when we were first living here. So I think that's starting to work its way out of the system, but it's just not a really healthy spot right now. So we're just doing what we can do with that. We have a big dirt patch here because we did get some compost delivered yesterday. Our hugelkultur bed from last year had some new compost thrown on top, and we put up cattle panel arches. Those are held in place by some old railroad ties that were on the property. I know there are issues with that being alongside food, but all that's going to go here is loofah. And I'm hoping to grow loofah to make our own sponges. We've never done that before. We'll see how it goes. Chickens back there, still happy being chickens. Still wondering why I didn't bring them food. How dare I visit and not bring food? Yep, one of our buff Orpingtons, those yellow chickens, is really broody, and she collects everybody's eggs and sits on them. And then when you try to harvest them, if you can get her to move, she will often use her beak to roll the eggs after her and keep them up under her, even though you push her off the eggs. So that's a fun time. They're probably going to move today or tomorrow. They're up here in the shade, so there's not a lot of grass, so they have to move a little more often. Oh, there she is. She thinks I came to take her eggs, so she's going to come and sit on them so that I can't grab them. They're not even her eggs. She grabs everybody else's eggs. She's like, what are you doing? All right. They've laid eggs out in the middle, not up in the nesting box, of course. I bet she moved them so that we couldn't come get them. I will dig those out later. Our soon-to-be corn patch has had some work done. So we had laid out cardboard to kill back some of the grass. So we picked that up yesterday, spread out some compost and some topsoil. And I need to put weed barrier down here because it is about time to start corn. We've tried corn a few times. We haven't really been successful, and I think a lot of that is just because we haven't planted enough of it in one go. So this year, we are not going to have that problem. We're going to plant lots of corn. And I think I'm also going to plant beans, pole beans, along the little fence we've put in to keep the dogs away from the corn, because we harvested dried beans last year, and we just canned those for the first time a couple weeks ago, and it went really, really well, and we eat a lot of beans. So we're going to do the same thing. We're going to throw pole beans over here and just leave them alone, let them dry on the vine, and collect the dried beans, and then we can can them whenever we're running low on beans. There's no rush. We can keep them dry for a long time, can them when we're ready. I think I skipped over the fig trees down here at the end of the garden. They are putting out new leaves, looking really good. So we have one fig tree there and one over here. They look like they're really happy in their new spot, so they're doing well. And let's go check on the rest of the fruit trees. So we really need to mow over here too. That's also on the to-do list, the very long to-do list for this weekend. But our new trees that we just put in this year all seem to be alive and doing well. This is a peach tree that has started to bloom. I believe this one is an apple. No, this is a pear. This one hasn't really put out anything yet, but it does have these buds on the end of its limbs, so I think it's doing okay. Just hasn't quite opened up yet. Another peach tree back here that has blooms and leaves. It's doing really good. Got a few flowers on there. Another pear tree at the back here. Blooms and leaves. And some green beetles. I'm not sure what kind of beetle that is. I'm sure it's easy to find on Google. Back to our regularly scheduled programming. This pear tree is doing really well. It has put out blooms and leaves. Seems to be happy back here at the back. We have an apple tree that is still just sticks, but it also looks like it's trying to put out blooms. not blooms. There are little leaf buds at the end of its branches, so I think it's doing okay. Just hasn't quite woken up from winter yet. We have another pear that also has not put out leaves or bloomed yet, but has buds on the branches. So I think we're doing okay with those. All of our fruit trees that we planted last year are also doing well, except for this bonfire peach that's just never really done anything. I don't know if it's ever gonna do anything. It's kind of disappointing. We've taken the time to baby this thing. Oh, nope, there are new leaves. Right here, there are a few new leaves, so I guess it is still alive. That's good to know. Our lime tree is starting to perk back up a little bit after winter. It has some blooms on it, so hopefully we get a few this year. And our lemon tree has tons of blooms on it, so hopefully we get some lemons too. It's also looking a little bit rough, but it has new growth coming now. It's just recovering from winter. We did bring these in anytime it got below freezing. Kept them up on the porch when it was cold, but they're doing pretty good. Down here, we have some Goji Berries that we just started. We got from a friend last year. We're just waiting for those to get bigger. We have some, I think, raspberries, if I'm remembering correctly, that we started in pots over here. My Christmas cactus I got last year that's just kind of hanging out. So all of those are doing well. For this area, we are totally overrun with this Velcro-like sticky weed that I despise. It really needs to be cut out. And a trash bag I keep forgetting to put out for the trash. But our plum tree is so happy. It's put out tons of leaves, tons of blooms. So I'm hoping we get a plum or two this year out of that. The other plum tree is not quite as happy. It's just a little bit late. So it has blooms now too. It's going to be putting out leaves soon. So hopefully we get a couple of plums this year. We had tried to start some berries along the fence here, and frankly we just didn't water them enough because they were out of sight and out of mind, which is always a risk. But I think this one is doing okay. I think this one's going to come back, and if I remember right, this is a Nanking cherry, so we should at least have that. One of our apple trees here at the front is not doing much yet. It does have some buds on the branch tips, so it's alive. It just hasn't done anything yet. Our other apple tree has always been really happy. It puts out lots of leaves, puts out lots of blooms. It tried to make an apple last year, but it didn't quite make it. But who knows? We'll see if we get an apple this year. The tree is still too young to really let it produce much fruit, but we can try for one or two. Have our other peach tree down here that has started to bloom and put out leaves, so it's happy. New little leaves back here. So hopefully we get some fruit this year. That would be really great. One of the most exciting new things going on are all of these seedlings we have. It's warm enough that we are just leaving these outside. We started them outside, they're just living outside, but we want to get them started before we put them in the ground. They just seem to hold up a little bit better. And what happened is our local Lowe's decided to give away a bunch of seed. They had many 5-gallon buckets full of seed, and I think the issue is maybe that they stopped selling the brand. It was Seeds of Change seed, and it was for this year. It's not even old, but they were just giving it to anybody who wanted to come take what they wanted. So we ran up there and got a lot of seed packets for free. And that's really, really awesome, because what we're going to do is start a lot of that seed, and then we're going to plant it out in this wooded area. So some of it's going in the garden, but some of it is just going to go out here in the woods and see if we can overrun the weeds with things that make food. So we'll see how that goes. Our thought process is twofold, so hopefully it'll make some food and we'll have more food to harvest. But if not that, at the very least, maybe the wildlife will eat what's in the woods and leave our main garden alone. So we're hoping it really amps up production, but if nothing else, it should increase what we can harvest because we won't be fighting the wildlife so much for it. So that is going to be fun to see what happens with that. Definitely a bit of an experiment, but with free seed, you can't miss. So that's how things are going in our neck of the woods. I hope your gardens are doing great. If you live more north of us, you're probably just now thinking about getting started, but I hope everything goes really well and you get your gardens off to a good start. See y'all later. Bye.